Well, here we are. We're back. Well, we are. Somewhere Jane's on here as well. Somewhere. It's just, here we are.
I'm back.
We're back. We've been away. You may have noticed our absence for a few weeks because we've been away on, as the Americans call it, vacation. Here in the UK, we call it our holidays. Over to Italy, haven't we, Jane? We've got a house in Italy, which we hope in due course to make that, we're thinking, into a spiritual centre underneath. But we'll tell you all about that in due course. But tonight we haven't really planned a full show again, but it worked quite well last week, where we just asked you for your questions.
It worked well last week because we weren't here, Craig.
No, last time, yeah. So you could ask us all sorts of things about, like, omnipresence, for example. You can ask things about dreams or things. You can ask things about your personal paranormal experiences. Anything that puzzles you. I see the stuff in the press at the moment about Enfield. They're making a new program about Enfield. I've just ordered a book about the Book of Enoch, von Daniken's new book. There's what things interest you. This is your chance to get mediums talking about a topic that you love, or that you've experienced, or something you want to know about. And it doesn't matter how simple the questions are. You know, I remember in a spiritualist church, I was given a talk about auras, and someone came up afterwards and said, what actually is an aura? And I thought, well, surely you know that. But then you think, well, that was their first time to experience these. So it doesn't matter how simple they are or how complex they are.
Not simple, the people, Craig.
No, but I'm saying the questions, aren't they? You don't have to be embarrassed about writing something you feel daft because you think, I should know that. No, we'd like to do all of it, from the simple to the complex. So we'll have your questions. Have you got any questions, Jane?
Well, is anybody interested in voice phenomena? And
you were thinking about that too.
Yes, yeah. And electric voices.
EVP, as they call it.
Are they clairaudiently picking things up?
And tips about your own psychic and mediumistic development, because we've been doing, both of us have been working all our lives from a young age, doing mediumship. And if you're new on the path yourself, there might be things that you're not sure of. And also remember, we're also very interested in a much wider form of spirituality too. As you know, I'm very interested in the Nadis and Indian thinking and other forms of philosophy, East and West, and psychology. Carl Jung, there's another one I know a lot about. Seed us with your questions. Let's have a few hellos first, shall we? See where people are coming in from, guys. There's nobody here.
It's goodbyes.
Is there anybody there?
Oh, Simon. Good evening, Craig and Jane. Good evening,
You know Simon, I expect, because it's a Facebook
he's a
link.
Funeral director.
Oh, righty-ho.
He's been here as a guest.
Oh, that was Simon that came here. Funny, he was on my mind earlier today for some reason. Yeah.
Jojo sending both good vibes from
San
California.
Diego, yeah.
What's that? Put your glasses on, Jane.
It's the devil something or other. Missed the end of that bit.
Well, he's gone.
We shoot him away a bit quick then. Good evening from Stockholm in Sweden.
Good evening.
I went to Stockholm.
I've been there.
It was lovely, wasn't it? That was an archipelago. Actually, amazing place. I was amazed how nice it was.
Hi both, we missed you. Thank you for the work that you're both doing. Love the show. Keep it going. Ali from Devon. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Just talking about Devon on the way
Helen.
up, actually, how beautiful
Hi
it
from
is.
Helen in Sheffield, UK. Hi, Helen.
Your granddad came from Sheffield.
Lydia, good evening, Jane and Craig from Germany, and hopefully that you had an awesome holiday.
Yeah, we did. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was
crazy as well. Absolutely crazy, because we got let down by IKEA because we got at home
IKEA,
there.
the builders.
Yeah, but the IKEA didn't deliver in time. They a month late, and they delivered on the day we arrived. So first thing we did when we got to it was putting beds together, putting wardrobes together, all late into the night, hoping we got somewhere we can lay our heads down and the grandkids' heads down. Good evening, Craig and Jay from Germany. Yes, got that one. Hello from Dallas. Dallas, yes.
Rhoda.
Dallas, Texas. I'd like to go to Texas one day. I reckon Texas is a real place to explore, actually.
Hi from sunny Cornwall, and that's from Belladonna's Art of Healing.
Are they being sarcastic? Because I think we're a bit rainy here, and I reckon you're not sunny down in Cornwall today.
Good morning from Malaysia. Good morning.
Oh, all the way from Malaya. Yeah, Malaysia. Fantastic, yeah. Getting people, really getting a lot of interest all around the world with some of the people that have got an interest in what we say. So let's have your questions. Lots of people there from all around the world. if you've got any things you'd like to seed us with ideas and questions, now is your time, and put some of your thoughts in. I know you all get a bit shy to begin with, and then once someone puts a question in, others follow and think, oh, that's an interesting idea. What about that? Yeah.
I know my mother said to me, perhaps that villa where you've got is haunted. I said, well, we'll be at home then, won't we?
Yeah. It was quite an amazing place. It's a real old building.
It's 100 years old.
He had snakes in the garden, though. That was a bit of a scary one, wasn't it? But it was, which is a good sign, because that's a sign that Shiva's with you, actually. Yeah. I remember in India...
It was only about that big, and it went right across like that, and I was fascinated by it, watching it going on under a garden pot. Yeah. And it really looked like a glowworm, but it was green and yellow, and it just slithered along so elegantly. Yeah. And I thought that's a good symbol.
It's a good sign. Because it's the bringer of knowledge. That's what the whole idea of the snake was, from the... Garden of Eden and beyond. It comes in all religions in the world somewhere along the line. And why the snake? That's always the thing that puzzles, because it sheds its skin, which is something. So it's a symbol of rebirth, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But also it comes up in a lot of indigenous things, like people that take ayahuasca or whatever it is, often talk about snake gods appearing, and why. Is it something to do with the DNA?
Snake people.
Yeah, or is it something to do with other peoples that came to Earth, Like I've just ordered...
Right, we've got an Ethel on the line here. Why do I keep seeing snakes while meditating? Well, it's quite a spiritual thing, seeing snakes. Because in medicine they have snakes, in all sort of rishis and swamis, they have cobras or snakes that protect them, don't they, Craig?
Yeah, and it depends also sometimes the context, Ethel, about, is the snake a negative thing? Or is you seeing it as a positive thing? Like, often we'll have a dream of snakes. I mean, have you ever had those dreams of a snake pit, for example, being chased by snakes in dreams? Snakes will often come across as very scary things, won't they? They're often all our fears and worries. When you're under a lot of stress, you'll have dreams about that. But then they also have this other side to them, which is kind of a spiritual thing. And particularly depending how it's going with your meditation and how you feel about what you see. Because in meditation, you don't usually get the energy of fears and things like that. It's more like as it is, isn't it, when you meditate? And the snake, of course, I'm sure you've come across it, is also a symbol of the Kundalini, which is like the energy center at the base of the spine. It's 3.5 coils as a snake that is based at the base of the spine, that when awakened will rise up what you call the Sushumna, which is a middle channel that runs, there's 3 spiritual channels that run through the spine, and it runs up the central channel, the Sushumna, and this is what happens when a person awakens. When a person goes into the divine state, the enlightenment is the bad word, but the awakening, that energy channel, that spiritual energy channel in our spiritual body will awaken. So perhaps there's hints of that in your meditation, Ethel. Perhaps there's, unconsciously about the energy centers in yourself. So it's a symbol of knowledge too. So it's a good sign, I think.
There's a religion where they have snakes put in a tank, and they have to put their hand in it, these vipers, and sometimes the snakes bite the person, and if you survive it, then you've reached enlightenment and a divine path. Yeah. And there's a religion in that, and some of them are quite sort of over the top.
I've read one of the most amazing things. We went to a place in India called Mahabalapura, which is a fabulous ancient site, But nearby, on the road to Mahabalipura, there's a zoo that is entirely made up of snakes. Now, it's not just snakes in tanks. It's snakes in pits. It's just horrific, really. The amount of squirming boxes of snakes and all snake games and things like that. And there's a place the Indians take their kids. They take it to the snake farm. And I think Michael Palin went there actually on one of his journeys around the world, you know. And I remember we found this place and we thought, oh, what a weird place that was, you know. What
do they play?
thing.
Snakes and ladders there?
Snakes and Ladders was as an Indian game. It was invented from India, actually. That's an interesting fact for you.
I can
symbol
remember.
of life, what it's
I can remember when I stayed in an ashram, Sai Baba's ashram. I was sitting by this beautiful pond, and it had dangerous snakes. And I saw a snake still along, but it had two heads.
Oh yeah.
And I just thought, is that a symbol? It doesn't know where it's going or what's right and wrong. And I was just fascinated by it, and it was two heads, a snake, one
very
body.
auspicious. I believe in India that if they see the sign of a double-headed snake, it means that I presume Shiva is usually associated with the snakes, but it's supposed to be a symbol of a birth of somebody that's very high. It
just went right in front of me like that and circled around.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer this from Tarot London?
So, Tarot London. Okay, just to say, I think you are both amazing. Good, you can come again. Let's have lots more of those questions. Craig, I live in London. You have given me hope in many dark times. Bless you both. That's nice of you, actually. And I think even, you obviously do tarot yourself there, if you call yourself Tarot London. And I think even the people on the spiritual path who are, you know, helping others and things, we all need sort of guidance and help, don't we? And I think one of the things I like about this channel is it kind of brings a lot of spiritually minded people together, really. And I think it does. We all kind of need a bit of a light in these dark times. I think
it's best to be with spiritual people because you get no egos.
Well, we were talking. We're going to go to. We thought we'd go and visit a spiritualist church on Sunday for the first time
Sunday,
in ages, didn't we?
Yeah, and we're seeing a couple of lovely spiritual people tomorrow in Primrose Hill, which I'm really, really pleased to meet up. And it's nice because the energy's nice and you feel all as one. So it's nice to be with other spiritual people.
I think in life it's very important to mix with the right sort of people in your life. And it's not easy because at work and things like that you mix with all sorts of people who might not be appropriate for you. But if you surround yourself with the right people, it rubs off on you. You know, so if you surround yourself with spiritual people, it will quicken your spirituality. Have you ever had this experience yourself, any of you guys? You know, when you've mixed with spiritually minded people, you become more spiritual. And I think even talent rubs off, you know, because if you want to be an artist, if you mix with other artists, yes, you'll inspire each other, but also I think something rubs off. If you want to be a scientist, you mix in with other scientists and it will somehow unconsciously work with you. The energy, perhaps it's our auras or something, or an energetic field, or our collective inspiration, or just a mind group. Because I believe in this idea that there's like group minds, you know. Maybe it just lifts you and helps you to become more advanced in this field you want to go in.
Right. Ava, what's your thoughts on Lucy Lebby and Case? Well, it's quite shocking, isn't it, to think somebody that's in a caring profession as a nurse. This is the girl that's murdered the babies now. And when you actually look at that person, she looks quite innocent, quite shocked. And I'm wondering if she didn't really suffer with mental illness. And it does, I mean, a woman to actually go through all that birth and a baby put in intensive care, and somebody comes along and plays God and takes that child. Those parents got a life sentence themselves. But, you know, it's very, very sad. And I believe she must have suffered from mental illness or something.
Yeah, and she was absolutely remorseless. I mean, I think it's really right that they've said that the people that are accused or found guilty should face their victims. I mean, it must be so hard when they don't even turn up. You know, it's a cowardly act not even to turn up. And she was apparently she had absolutely zero empathy. And there's a lot of people out there with criminal sort of mentality who have no empathy whatsoever. I mean, have you met them in life? You know, I mean, sometimes we meet people in real life and I think, how can that person think or act or be like that? I mean, in Lucy Letby, we see someone in an extreme. But don't we also sometimes see it in the ordinary people we meet in life? Certain people don't seem to have any real idea of empathy. They can't put themselves in the place of the other person. They almost, there's such a deep level of selfishness in some people, because I think that's what it is. It's about me, isn't it? It's selfishness.
Well, I think she was after a married doctor and she wanted to play God, and so therefore if there was a crisis situation where that child couldn't breathe and obviously the doctor had to come out and she wanted to be a hero in one way, look what I'm trying to help these babies and things, but it was obviously she must have injected air to go into these babies that had gone straight to the heart and that. So it was, I believe that somebody observed that there seems to be a lot of deaths on this particular ward of babies, and it was on her shift. That's how it got discovered.
I think the whole idea of the criminal mind is quite an interesting thing too when you think about it spiritually. Like Colin Wilson, who's a brilliant writer, who's dead now, but his books are still just as good. The Occult was his most famous one. And The Outsider was another one that got him started. But he was fascinated by the spiritual mind of people that are criminals. And one of the things I found interesting too is that the actual palmistry of criminal people is there's very distinctive signs on the palm, which I won't go into, but I mean, this whole book's been written about this, but that seem to suggest that certain people have written in their palm criminal tendencies.
Well, would you say in psychopaths it's in their DNA? That inherited
well, something's in it, and there's certainly different types of people. You know, I mean, and they often become world leaders, don't they? We see them all the time. You know, Hitler obviously is a good example, but you know, they have zero empathy with people.
The strange thing about Hitler, he was a vegetarian, and he liked animals, especially German Shepherd dogs, because he owned one.
Yeah, and actually, originally his actual ideas that he had for Germany on a practical level, many of them were very sensible at the time. You know, they were very sensible ideas that could have pulled Germany out of its terrible economic state. But then thrown into the mix was this hatred of the Jews. So it was totally mixed up for something.
Because Hitler was very much into art, and he had a Jewish art teacher that discredited him, so he had hatred towards the Jews, and he had a disabled brother, and then he had a hatred because that brother had all the attention.
And it was a kind of obsessiveness, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody looks for scapegoats, don't they, too? And it's and in difficult times. And I think this is something that we might see again in modern day, actually, because, you know, when things go wrong, you look for scapegoats. I think things are going to go very wrong in China soon, for example. I think there's been an economic collapse in China soon. And what will happen? They'll find scapegoats. Taiwan will be one scapegoat, you know, direct people's attention somewhere else. And they do it already. Tibet again, perhaps the greater persecution in Tibet again. But, you know, these people with these mixed up minds, you know, they really do. They are, what happens to them spiritually too, you know.
Well, they can't be spiritual to actually commit all these acts, Craig.
Well, everybody's spiritual. Everybody is a being. Everybody will find salvation ultimately of some level. But, you know, is it of the body or is it of the soul?
Right, Chandra says, why is it that good people suffer more than bad ones in this world, not in the solution? Well, everybody suffers on a different level, don't they? And you've got to have a bit of suffering to find the honey pot and the nectar and the good. It's all lessons. It's all karmic.
Yeah, I think it's a hard question, that. Why do good people suffer so much? I mean, I know lots of people right now who I know are really good people. They're very charitable. They've done wonderful work with people, both in their family and their friends, and they're wonderful people who encounter incomprehensible suffering sometimes, and difficulties and things taken away. And it makes you wonder, it makes you think, is there really a law of karma when we see it working out like that? But perhaps the karma itself works slowly.
It does.
You know, it doesn't work instantly. And maybe this is something that we carry forward from earlier lives, that we've developed, and then that past karma pushes us further in our development, because it's only in, because you think you only ever really develop in life, really quickly anyway, is when you really are facing adversity, don't you? I mean, the times in my life where I've had the worst periods have been the times, I think, where I've really found my mettle, and I've really found, you know, I was able to do that. I didn't chicken out. I didn't compromise my principles and things like that. And it's only when that life throws the worst at you that you really find who you really are, and find if you really are what you think you are. It's like people say, you know, a lot of people say, I've never been in the army, I've never been to war. Would I have the courage to do what those men did in the trenches, or in the Second World War, or in other places? You know, would I have had the courage to follow those terrible things through? You don't know until you've been there. And it's the same in life, really. It's not until something's really thrown at us that we really do find the good within us. And I think it brightens our brightest virtues when we're faced with those situations. So it's not a question of why, I think it's the way it is. You know, we would love the world to be different sometimes. We'd love the world to be free of suffering. But is not suffering part of just the way it is?
Evolution.
It's just there, you know. And ultimately, I think we do transcend suffering. I think suffering is finally let go. And I think that happens as we raise through the consciousness in this world. We can free ourselves from suffering, I believe, and in the spirit world we are free of suffering but still suffering there in a different sense, but the sort of suffering that we know in this world.
A person being stripped of money and having to start again because they've been through that difficult pathway, and it's a lesson, and they're going to make sure that they never go through that pathway again. So it's all a learning curve.
Yeah. And it's easy for us to sit here in our armchairs saying about suffering and things like that, but when you're actually going through it, and you're faced with difficulties, and you're at the edge of despair, it's not so easy. But when you finally come out of it and you look back on it and you look at it again, you think, yeah, that was the making of me. It can be the breaking of you, but what we should be doing as spiritual people is to make sure it becomes the making of us. This is where, again, we have the free will, the choice to move forward or not. And that's where courage comes in, I think.
Courage and be fearless. Elizabeth, I am so sorry to ask. I saw a medium for a charity event, and the medium started to cry as he said I had so much sadness around me. I ended up telling him it was okay and everything would be okay, but to be honest, it had freaked me out. Thank you for all you do. Well, perhaps he might have been
freaked me out too.
Well, he might have been a sensitive person, but some of them are mediums. They're a little bit of drama queens. I can remember a medium once on the platform was doing all crossing and like he was a monk, and then talking in Latin, and it was all so show business like, and I thought that's not coming from the spirit world. That's you being drama and over the top. But I mean, a medium should really be grounded, their feet firmly on the ground, should give evidential proof, and should give you names, should give you how someone passed, and should be telling you things, not crying and that. And I expect it would have freaked somebody out.
Yeah, I think that's bad mediumship.
Stupid.
Very, very poor mediumship, frankly. I know, you see, I mean, sometimes your heart bleeds for people when you've got something terrible that you're talking about, particularly with mediumship and the loss of children, for example, and things like that. It's heartbreaking stuff. But the medium should really be not engaged emotionally in this. They should be kind of slightly transcendent to it. They should be above being sucked into the emotion. All you are is the messenger, and you're given the message. You've got to have the empathy. But if you become so sensitive and so empathic like that, you're not going to be much support to someone, are you? Really, you're not going to be given the strength or given the courage to go forward. I mean, that medium is weakening your position, not really helping you much. So Elizabeth, I could understand you did get freaked out. I think I would have got a bit freaked out by that. You know, I'd probably ended up saying, well, come on, bloke, pull yourself to bloody go. You're a medium, you know. I mean, it's not really on, is it?
I never heard
and the thing is, there's so many people call themselves mediums, even within spiritualism now. We haven't been much into spiritualism of the last few years, really, because we've been doing other work. But people say, you know, some of the mediums are so weak now. And that's a shame that mediumship seems to have spread and it seems to be everywhere. But there's so few mediums that seem to be properly trained. It's so important to get properly trained. Which reminds me, actually, because I'm doing some training online. If you have a look at the website, at psychics.co.uk at the top of the screen. But you know, so I'm doing some workshops. But I mean, really, you need proper full-on circles in spiritualist churches. Really, that's what you really need.
Well, what you need is proper evidential proof. I mean, I had 2 clients that came today for a personal reading, and they were saying we don't go to the spiritualist church anymore because we're all up there. And they don't make sense, and they're just throwing everything out randomly, and it's put us off. Yeah,
so it's lost its way a lot, I think, unfortunately. I don't want to knock it, because it's a great thing to have, we need it, but I've been barking on for years about how it needs to reform, how it needs to get rid of the hymns and prayers and be more open to people that are not just wayward Christians, but people that are seeking. Lots of people
haven't heard of Doris Stokes. And she was a great medium, and she brought it out in the theatres.
But she had a hard time with spiritualism. But SAGB gave her a hard time.
They were jealous of her because she was so unique and so good. And you say, she's not a medium, she's a psychic, you know.
Yeah, they would always knock her, wouldn't they? Yeah, that's a shame. And people, I think when you get a modicum of success as a medium too, immediately they think you sold out.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's you know, it's a shame. There's a lot of jealousy. But that's the nature of it. It's a bit like the same thing happens in art and theatre too, doesn't it? People get catty to one another.
Right, Helen says, do you think that we agree to certain life events before we incarnate here on Earth, please? I suppose it depends on your past lives or reincarnation, really, what your earthly life is meant to be and what's your vocation to help others on life. I suppose life, you could say, is like a blueprint, isn't it, Craig? And you have to use your own free will.
I think there's a sort of blueprint in that respect that I think before we come into this life, we do have a certain amount of choice in that we can say that, yes, I want to do this. It's like...
You were a woman in a past life, that's why you don't like doing housework in this life.
I had multiple lives, one of which was female, according to the...
Nardi,
but that was only one. But you do like to jump on that one. I was also quite a ferocious person in a previous life too, so who knows. But I think we do... Our soul is neither male or female. And our absolute soul also carries with it karma, don't we? We carry karma. So like it or not, we're going to be drawn back into this world. You know, I don't see the spiritual world of the afterlife as something permanent. Spiritualists say it's permanent, but it's not. It's because our karma, our good karma, is almost like our heavenly bank account. It'll keep us there for a period of time. But then I think we sink down again and we have to come back and relearn and learn things again until we ultimately become, you know, awakened beings. And I think most of the work that happens spiritually happens here on earth. It's like we were talking earlier about the difficult times. It's in the difficult times that our progress is quickened. So I think we are given a bit of an insight into the map, and I think we're guided, and I think there's something in us that kind of knows it's what's meant to happen, and we embrace it. We say yes, and I think each of us chooses life ultimately, to choose the life that we have. So I think it's difficult. We don't know. How can we ever prove this? This is purely speculation. But I understand it that we do get a certain amount of choice. And I think the more advanced we become, the more choice we have about whether we incarnate again or not. We become ultimately, like the Buddhists call it, a bodhisattva, one that is free of the world, that can choose to come back again or not. And I think that is the case. I think as one develops spiritually, you would ultimately, you might choose to come back into this world of suffering and know that you're going to take on suffering because of compassion to others, you know. And these are the great beings, whether like Jesus, he suffered. Many of the great teachers suffered. You know, many of the great gurus of East and West suffered because they took on that suffering out of compassion. So there's a thought.
Right. Camille, does a person's vibration, frequency, emotions they are feeling determine what they experience in life? Example, the manifestations and experiences. Are we the centre of our own personal universe?
That's an interesting question.
It is, isn't it?
Well, when I think about this, I used to think, am I the centre of the universe? You know, is everything that's happening only about me? Because that's the only experience that I have, and each of us comes from that same standpoint, you know. And often we know that sometimes we send a thought out there and things happen. So on one level, yes, it is, because my viewpoint, whatever I am, is completely centered on who I am here and now. You know, I'm having an experience, and you who are watching me is also having experience. But there, obviously it's not just one person in the world. So I think what you're talking about here, you know, is there a personal centre to the universe? Yes. But also, this is what we call the personal self, the jiva, as we might call it. But that is also centred in the great light of the collective existence of the oneness of all. So we are perhaps like waves on top of the ocean, that our manifestation is here, we are a conscious being, I have personality, and yet in the depths of my soul, in the depths of your soul, in the depths of Jane's soul, in the depths of all of us, we're all one. And it's kind of two questions here, isn't it? Because you say, does a person's vibrational frequency, like your emotions and things you're feeling, determine what they experience in the manifestation? So what you're saying there is, the things we send out, does it affect what happens to us in our life? So if we're constantly sending out hatred, will that have a negative effect or not? Or will it boomerang back and come back from people hating us? Maybe now, or in a future life, or in far further ahead even. So yes, I think this is, again, all this kind of ties up with the idea of will as well in some respects, doesn't it? Because we have the will to be horrible, or we have the will to be nice. What we choose, we for some reason have this incredible thing that we can choose, you know. And it might be an illusion. It might be an illusion, but we do appear to have almost this strange folly, this ability to choose between a good path or a bad path, to be horrible people or good people. We can choose. So in that respect, I suppose that idea of a will, that idea of making a personal choice, means that the universe is moulding itself around our will in some ways. And yet that will may also be an illusion. The very will itself might not be mine. It might be coming from the Godhead itself. So these are really complicated and very, very hard to answer questions, frankly. And lots of people have tried to do it and come up with lots of different philosophies and ideas, some that are contrary to each other. And it's a bit like the idea of, you know, my thoughts are, it's all one. I am part of that one. And I seem to have will. I don't know if it's an illusion or not. I seem to have will, and I would like to use my will in a compassionate way, because I understand that I think if you use your will in a compassionate way, it brings happiness, and that's kind of the conundrum we all face in life. So I've gone off a bit of a long direction
you
there,
have
Jane.
Rather, haven't you, Mr. Parker?
I think that's an a very nice, interesting question there.
Yeah.
And I've answered it badly, but I hopefully it you know, it's some food for thought for all of us.
And Claire Donmafly, do you think when our Earth is no longer here, we will have another planet to incarnate? Well, it could be possible, couldn't it? Nobody knows that, because people are speculating. There's other life forms, like aliens and that, I'm sure there is. But I don't think the world's going to end just like that. I think we're eventually go back to the Ice Age. That's what I feel, but it won't be in our time, because I just feel that at the moment the world seems to be in a terrible place. All Mother Nature seems to be fighting back. We're getting all these freak weather conditions, and all across the world, all these fires and everything like that. Well, what can we expect if they keep stripping all the land and building on it? Because where we live, near green fields and that, it seems to be every inch of the countryside's being built on. And like you said today, look at those, was it pheasants or partridges?
Partridges in
they
the road.
They don't know where
nowhere
to go. And
yeah,
you're absolutely
a little group
right.
of four or five partridges in the road, and they didn't know what to do with themselves. It's sad. But I'm just coming to your question, though, because you're saying if the Earth is no longer here. I think that I've thought about this quite a lot. And there are references in, for example, the Nadis, which I've, as you know, I've taken a lot of interest in, and also in the Puranas of the ancient texts of India, that seems to suggest that we do incarnate on multiple planets, but we tend to focus on one planet in particular. So all of us that are probably watching this program tend to have incarnated and reincarnated on Earth. Maybe we've also reincarnated on other planets too, and maybe we've also reincarnated as animal form as well. Because there's more people alive today on Earth than there's ever been in the whole of human history. So there's not enough for us all to have had been Henry VIII, for example, because there's been so many people now who are alive. So yes, I think reincarnation would continue in multiple universes. There might even come, and there's also, when you think about the bigger picture, the scientists talk about the Big Bang. So the universe, billions of years ago, expanded from a singularity. Okay, it seems to be the way it seems to be at the moment. But one day the sun will become a red dwarf and will gradually absorb the Earth, and so the Earth is gone. And then one day the universe will keep expanding and expanding until matter can't hold itself together anymore. This is the idea of what they call, one theory is that what will happen will be the White Death. The universe will just expand out and out and out until it just becomes so thin that nothing can form again and there can be no universe. And then others say it's a bit like a heartbeat, that it all expands out and then gravity pulls it back again and it all comes down into one giant black hole and into a singularity and then explodes again. And then others say it works as multi-universes, that there's universes within universes within universes that are forming and forming. We can never know the answers to these things, but it does suggest to me that it goes on in forever. You know, that it's one heartbeat of God is the coming of the universe and the ending of the universe. That's one heartbeat, billions of years, one heartbeat, and it goes on and on. Wow. So I think it goes on forever.
Well, if there's going to be a big bang, Craig, I better get some shopping in.
yeah. They're not sure the Big Bang is correct as an idea, but it's one proposed idea of the way things began. You know, the question is, was there something before it? But when did time come into existence? They're all great ideas, these.
Hi there, Charlie Moneybags.
Oh, you can come again.
Hey, Craig and
Go and
Jane.
have a look, Charlie Moneybags, at the link below in the description, and become a patron. Because you guys, we need patrons. It helps us keep the show going. We really do need patrons to help make it work. So have a look, please, at the description below. Think about becoming a patron. If you can become a patron, you can give a small amount each month just to keep this channel on its toes and keep it going, and help us to keep this show coming out to you every night. We're giving up our time here to do this, but so if you can become a patron, it helps, and you can interact with me on the patron pages, and I try to put extra stuff up there for you and things like that, and get to know you all and answer your questions personally. So yeah, anyway, Charlie Moneybags, you're obviously what we need.
And he also says, can you communicate with anyone on the other side or with certain people? Wish you both the best. That's nice. Well, I think it depends. If somebody's in need, then spirit will come through. Yeah,
I'm just looking in the depth of that question. So people have often said, you know, you go on telly And they said, right, we want you to communicate with Kurt Cobain or with Elvis Presley or something like that and find out all the messages and what happened. I said, yeah, well, yes, I can do that. But I would need somebody with me who knew them personally, and there's an energetic connection. You can't just pull it out of the air and you know, get like Michael Jackson's hat, one medium did, and try to communicate or something by just holding the hat. Nonsense. You, in order to communicate, you have to have the people with you to make that link. You have to have that fluence so that the spirit world can make the link. So I couldn't sort of say, hey, I've got Elvis here. You know, do you realise that Elvis, this and that happened to Elvis, and come up with all sorts of stuff. There are mediums out there that claim to do that, but it don't work like that. You've got to get the evidence, you've got to get the proof, and then you've got to get the verification. Otherwise, fantasy, isn't it? Isn't it? It's just fantasy. You know, sorry, I've jumped in, Jane. Carry on, because
well, I
would
don't
you
know
agree
if I
with
can
that?
now. You jumped.
I spoilt it for you.
Well, as I said, you know, I always a great believer that it's the spirit world that make the appointments to people that come to me. I had 2 ladies that came today. I knew nothing about them, and I gave good evidence to communicate with them, and it was spot on. And then the other lady said, you don't recognise me, do you, Jane? I've been in the media and so. I said, well, no, I don't. Or I belong to a paranormal society and that. And she said, I knew you wouldn't know anything about me. That's why I found that I wanted to come to you and find out the truth, because the truth is very important. And it was a really, really lovely session, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But we always get a bit nervous, Craig and I, before you give a sitting, as we call it, because you never know, because we don't know if we're going to wake up with a headache, like Craig has migraine and things. But if the energy and the love is there and the person wants to communicate, then it happens. Because they were saying to me that they went to certain mediums and they shouldn't be doing it. They were daft as brushes and that. And I said, well, you know, some people go on the platform before they're ready, because now it seems to be you've got all these upcoming mediums that were looking for television, looking for fame, looking for money, and that's not what it's about. It's about service and helping people, and people grieving and lost loved ones. Then you have to have empathy and you have to have love, because nothing's worse than a mother losing a son. That's one of them that happened today. You've got any thoughts?
Yeah, I also similar. I mean, certain people are harder to communicate. For example, in my readings this week, I've had a similar situation in that someone wanted to communicate with someone who'd only been dead 3 or 4 days. And we will often say as mediums, well, it's probably a bit raw for you now. It's probably a bit difficult for you at this time. But they said, well, I'd really like to do it if we can, because there's been big question marks over things. And without obviously going into details, because it's a private things, but it's possible. A good communication came through, even though I would normally suggest to people that it can't be the case. Similarly, I remember doing like I've mentioned this one, I think, once before, in a spiritualist church giving a demonstration, and I was talking about this person, and I said that they're shaving me. Why is he talking about being shaved? And he said, well, actually, we've just come from the morgue, and he's been laid out there, and they said that they're going to be shaving him tonight, ready for the preparation for the funeral tomorrow. So he's being shaved as we speak. So the spirit was joking and saying, you know, I'm going to give you a message, I'm being shaved. You know, so that was a really important message for someone, because he gave real evidence and proof. So it's that, yes, you can communicate with anyone, I suppose. But some situations are harder. And I think if a person's been a skeptic in this life, it's much harder, I think, for sometimes the spirit person to be able to communicate. My teacher, Peter Close, I remember him telling me when we were developing our mediumship, he said he had a very strong Catholic priest that didn't want anything to do with the idea of communicating with the spirit world because of the way he'd been brought up. And he said he saw the image of him there holding the cross, saying, I want to speak to that person over there. I don't believe in mediums, but I need to speak to that person. So we took that as that they still carried their perhaps misconceptions there into the next world, you know. And even in the spirit world, might have even seen mediums as a bad thing, but in that particular case needed to make a communication. So, you know, we don't all become enlightened beings in the spirit world. We carry with us all our foibles, all our mix-ups, all our misconceptions. They still go over there with us. We might see the bigger picture, but, you know, so communication is difficult sometimes, not always, but it's possible, I suppose, with just about everything and everybody.
I love that picture of that Charlie money bags. It's good, great. It's a great character. Hi Craig and Jane, I sometimes feel a blowing sensation over my head in my bedroom. Is this my guides? Well, that's quite difficult to answer, isn't it, without actually seeing this person. Well, sometimes people do have signs or reports or different things, or feelings or sensations, so I wouldn't completely wipe that out, but guides, really, once again, you've got to have proof, haven't you?
Yeah, I suppose you've got to be a bit careful with all these type of things of knowing, you know, skeptic person, oh, it's a draft, you know, which could be, of course it could be, but I have known it sometimes that it's odd sometimes when you're giving somebody a reading again, and there's been strange physical things happen in the room. Scents and smells often will occur. A perfume smell might fill the room when you're doing a mediumistic link with someone. And we say, where did that smell come from? You know, nice smells, I mean. But then that's a common thing. And then a breeze, yes, sometimes I've had that happen. We've had it happen in a room and it's not explainable. Sometimes, you know, I remember giving a reading to someone, and he'd been he worked as an airline pilot, and as I was talking, the whole room filled with the sound of an airport and aeroplanes and helicopters. And was that something outside? And it seemed to be coming from inside the room.
I can remember doing a sitting once, and this lady sat in front of me, and we both heard a child singing "Happy Birthday," and because we both looked out the window thinking it was school children coming back from school, sat down, and we heard like a choir boy singing happy birthday, and the lady burst out crying. She said, yes, my son that I lost, he used to be a choir boy, and it was his birthday today. So even we were being a Doubting Thomas.
I know, you could
come from another
there might
direction.
be alternative explanations so often, and yet it happens at such an opportune time, in such a significance with the very message you're giving. And you know, I mean, where does the smell of 4711 come from? Who wears 4711? And yet the room, the grandmother wore 4711, and the smell fills the room, and you can remember it from childhood and you think, you know, is that just me? No, we're both hearing it. We're sensing it, you know. So it's strange, isn't it? Particularly when two of you hear the same thing at the same time, or sense and feel it. So breezes, maybe too. Well, who knows?
Sometimes people feel that somebody's just touched their face slightly, or that it's probably one way of the spirit world communicating, because they can't get through to that person. So
you get lots
aware.
of signs too, don't you? And like butterflies landing on the coffin,
robins,
and things like that. Clocks stopping. You know, all these things happen a lot. Yeah.
And,
and you can say, oh, it's just a robin, or it's just a butterfly got into the church. But significantly, it seems to happen very much. And why?
Or
dragonflies too.
A song must come on the radio that only you would know, and your partner that you lost was your favourite song. Why do these things happen?
Why does it come at that time? Is it selective? Are we selectively hearing just that song because it's significant to us? Or is it something more?
Meant
you know,
to be
there can always be a way of trying to explain it away. But when it happens, you think, wow, something weird's gone on there. You know, something significant. So keep your questions coming, guys, won't you, please? What's your view on AI, artificial intelligence?
I think it can be very helpful, very clever, but it also can be very dangerous, because it can take over. You could start wars, and I think you've got to be careful, because now it's trying to take out the music industry, and I think, you know, it can write a book in so many minutes and everything, and that, because you've tested it, haven't you, Craig?
I've tried. I've got it to write stuff. You know, I thought, let's see how much it can write. So I put the ideas for a story in it, and I say write in the style of, you know, and I think of an author that I like. and I said, I tried one on H.G. Wells. I said, write in the style of H.G. Wells, and I started giving it the plot for a story that would have been a typical H.G. Wells idea, and it was very creative, and obviously not conscious, but it was using so much information and putting all that information in that it was absolutely remarkable. And I think, wow, that's incredible that it can get that far. And I think that is that book that it's come up with there. Okay, I've seeded it some good ideas, but is it coming up with something that is valid, or is it coming something that is just like the book writing machines that they had in George Orwell's 1984, where they just produced the endless trash for the proletariat, in his story. So there's a big question mark. Is it really creative? And I mean, if you watch Netflix, you think, well, that's the same old plots and stories being regurgitated by immature adolescent directors, I reckon, because they come up with such crap and rubbish. You think it's the same old thing, last heist, or last time a assassin's going to do the last job, and things, all these sort of stupid, silly ideas.
Wonder, with
so is it creative?
Artificial intelligence is not trying to take over the world.
But it's not. I think it will have. I think it'll have a negative effect in that it makes people lazy. You don't need to write the email now. You say, write me an email to the boss apologising because I'm not feeling well. I've been on the toilet all day and I can't come into work. And it would write it in such a way that it would be convincing.
God.
So it could write that email for you, and it could write a description to this. I've used it sometimes for the descriptions for the YouTube. Jane and I have done a show today about so and so, so and so, so and so. Write a brief 3-sentence description to put in, so then you can just get the description put in there. So it can make you very lazy. It's very useful, I think. But then AI is not just about creativity. You see, AI can be used for research. It can be used in medicine. It can be used in psychology. Yeah. It can be used in politics.
Gathering all the information.
This is where the dangers start coming, because information, we've all given away our information. If I want to if I want to sort of get special benefits and things like this, and I have to give my information away. If I go into Tesco's now, I can't let the discounts on the products unless I agree to have the Tesco's card, which means they know everything about my marketing habits. They know what I'm spending on what and when and why. There's a lot. There's a lot of information it could hold about you. What if you're buying booze every day and you're an alcoholic? It knows it. You see. What about how would that affect your insurance? And so artificial intelligence can jump from one platform to another. So our personal freedoms can be extremely at risk, and we give it away all the time. I mean, I hate the idea, for example, of a cashless society, which I also bring in with some of these ideas too, because you go into Marks and Spencer's or and Sainsbury's now, and there's not a single counter where you can go through and the person to put it through on the thing for you. It's all done by self-service, so they're getting you to do all the work. It's all done by card. You can't really do it by cash very easily. So they know all your spending habits. They're gathering information from you. They know exactly what you're doing all the time. And what if this and looking at the politics of the world at the moment, particularly in America, and it's here too, where we've got kind of left-wing really ideas running out of control in many respects. And the idea of the controlling society, the society that wants to control you, the society that wants to control the swamp and all the rest of it, I mean, dare we have artificial intelligence when it comes to voting? Dare we have artificial, because it can influence you, You'll also be able to have a Craig and Jane show in the future when Jane and I are long dead, where you could have this show being shown in the future with us given questions on completely new topics, not just repeats of this show, but actual mannequins of me and Jane being generated by artificial intelligence. Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing or not? And is it not best that we just have, for example, it can make a new, they got songs by Johnny Cash that have been generated by artificial intelligence. You know, is that good? Are we not actually devaluing Johnny Cash's music by making more music in the same style, even if it sounds great and it sounds just like Johnny Cash with the same sort of ideas? But are we not degrading what has been done already? If we can have, you know, every Elvis song being a new Elvis song every day if we want one. You know, it's damaging creativity. It's damaging our abilities to think, and most importantly, I think the danger is also in how social manipulation, because these big companies, they don't give a damn about us. They'll take everything. They'll sell us boot polish and pretend it's Marmite. You know, they'll give us stuff that'll kill us, you know, because they don't care. We'll look at the cigarette industry. It's been out there for such a long time. Look at the gambling industry. Look at the alcohol industry. They don't care. Look at the medicines, you know, where these businesses don't care in the slightest. And now we're putting something as powerful as artificial intelligence in the hands of companies. I think artificial intelligence needs to be developed collectively. There needs to be only one form of artificial intelligence, and the world should contribute to it, and it should be one that is highly regulated, and it should be something like the United Nations type of thing. But the sad thing is, even those things don't work because the powers get in there and want to take control of it, you know. So it's a very, very dangerous thing that requires deep thought and regulation now, not until it's run out of control. Because once it's run out of control, the damage it can do is absolutely colossal, even possibly could create our extinction.
A message from artificial intelligence saying the show is nearly coming to an end.
How are we doing? No, we've still got a few more minutes, not long. But I will take this
2
opportunity to say to you, why don't you become a patron and have a look in that description below, blah, blah, blah. Because it does help the show. And the more patrons you have, the more we can keep the show going. And I would love to say thank you to all those patrons who do contribute and help us once a month with your contributions, small and large. We thank you so much, because we couldn't do this without you. And how much does it cost to become a patron? Not very much. And if you give a little bit, you know, it's you'll pay once to get your Sunday paper is less than that, you know. So please give a contribution and help us to keep this show and help it keep it moving and help it to thrive. And ultimately, you know, Jane and I, as you know, we're trying to get a spiritual centre together. Ultimately, if we can really get things going, we're getting there. But so far, it's all our contribution.
Yeah, it's all hard.
But hopefully there's others that will help us along the line who have said they will. Okay. I think we're coming to the end then, Jane, are we? Any last thoughts?
Just keep safe, look after yourself, love each other, and be fearless.
Yeah, and keep following the channel, and don't forget, give it a thumbs up and a like. That always helps us. And if you're here for the first time, don't forget to follow us. And lots of videos coming out from both of us in the coming weeks. All details about our work, all details about our channels is all in the description below. Go and have a look at the website. You can find out there about workshops that we're doing. You can find out there about the readings that we do. You can get your Nadi readings there through my website, and you can also get my books and things. So it's all there. So support the channel, support us if you can, guys. It does help. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.